going on, NRW peeps? We are here to discuss the end of Game of Thrones, the end of an era. Let me pick it up. I'm going to try to pep up my energy. I'm a little bit sad to see it all come to an end. First of all, I am Glenn Lawrence. I am joined here by CC the Geek, Marianne the Awesome, and CY the Incredulous. Is that a word? Is that how you pronounce it?
Incredulous.
Incredulous. There it is. And we're here to review the series finale of Game of Thrones. We just watched it. We saw the last episode. I have thoughts. My thoughts aren't positive. So I think we should probably start off with somebody else who has a little bit more of a positive opinion of what we just saw. Basically, this was the wrap-up of everything that we've been watching for the last 10 years. The end of George R.R. Martin's series as televised. Of course, the book hasn't come out yet. But this was it. This was the end, man. So I guess should we run through the episode and then talk how we feel about it? Or do we want to give opinions first?
Well, I know that you have theories.
I mean, I have theories, I have opinions, sure. My biggest one is that we saw SS spinoff sell off to the end.
We saw a few spin-offs sell off.
Yeah.
We saw one go to North and one go, so.
Yeah.
I'm just still taking it all in.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not ready to be like, oh, it was all horrible. I'm still blown though that I didn't see Bran warg into a dragon. I was kind of looking forward to that.
Well,
Even though he mentioned,
yeah, they hint that like he's going to solve
do it.
the Drogon problem.
Yeah,
and
but
how else is he going to do it?
I wanted to see it.
It very much had like a Marvel feel to it. Like at the end, like, oh yeah, wink and a nod. We're going to go head off and find the dragon, and I'm going to go off where the map doesn't go. Like all of these things.
I think more of the point, it's more like that last half hour of Return of the King from the Lord of the Rings adaptation, where it's just, all of these storylines are at this, like, and I said this earlier, most of this episode is basically, it is the wrap-up. We had the big conclusion, the real big conclusion last week, the follow-up conclusion with the ultimate fate of Daenerys, and then it's just wrapping up what's left of the cast, how do they end, because unlike a 2-hour movie where it just ends on a high note, this was definitely a long-running series where they're going to show a hint of what happens after the series, because it's not just going to end, because that would piss everyone off.
Well, because plus people's lives continue on, which was one of the biggest gripes that I had. So let's just run through the episode. It begins where the last one left off.
Hold on. If you haven't seen it yet, leave now. That's it. That's all
Yes, in case you clicked this thing saying that, we're going to do a video discussing the last episode. Yeah.
Right. So spoiler alert, we'll go through the episode. This episode, it begins where the last one left off. King's Landing has been decimated by Daenerys after she went into a fit of rage, hearing the bells ring, 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 ring in her ear. She couldn't take it, destroyed the entire city. We get to see the aftermath of that. Tyrion is walking through the city very sad. He's stricken.
More shell-shocked.
Yeah, and shell-shocked, seeing the dead body, seeing the dead children.
Seeing the dude walk by with half of his skin burned off.
Yeah, that was cool. So there was, here's the thing. There were some very cool visuals in the scene. They did a great job. Set design, costume design.
Yes.
Score, I thought, was pretty good.
Yeah.
The
cinematography was good.
The production value was 100% on point.
What you'd expect from the most expensive hour and a half of television.
It's what you would expect. Yeah. And so Tyrion, he's walking through the city. He sees everything, and then Daenerys comes out. There's
Tyrion and Jon.
Yeah, they are both walking through, seeing the destruction, kind of giving each other the googly eyes, like, man, we really messed up. And then we get that cool shot of Daenerys coming out of the Red Keep, I guess.
Yeah.
What's left of the Red Keep with the cool wings behind her of her dragon and the flag. And
our fearless leader isn't here, but he was very impressed by that shot of her walking out the doorway and then the dragon's wings expanding behind her, making her look kind of.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that was really well done.
Well done.
Little cliche for me, but apparently people are into that.
Yeah.
I think it was creative.
It was somewhat on the nose, but I thought, hey, that works. Next thing we see is Tyrion come back after looking at the remains of his brother and dead sister down at the bottom of the Red Keep, where they had been buried together. He finds the golden hand, and he sees that they're caressed in each other's arms, so we get to see them off. That's the last we see of Cersei and Jaime. Then he comes out looking at Daenerys. He throws his hand symbol down, which I thought, oh, you're dead, son. That's it.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about Daenerys' hair in this episode?
Ooh, please,
because
please.
I think it was different. It was unlike any other style that she had ever worn, even though she's always kind of had this braid combination. I mean, they all do. It's kind of like the style of the day. But the way her hair was styled, it was almost like it reminded me of a dragon's head.
Ooh,
And,
true.
I thought that was very telling in terms of kind of how she, like, turned into this crazy, like, fire-breathing tyrant, you know.
It was kind of like how should I do my hair to burn a city? I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna go with.
But no, her hair was different. That it was different when she was burned. Right, this is after.
Oh, post burn.
Yeah, because previously, if you looked at like her hairstyles, particularly as it referred to the braids, it was always done sort of akin to the Dothraki style, because she was the Khaleesi and she'd not been defeated. You know what I mean? So it just always sort of got longer. Yeah. But this one, I mean, this is some of the most intricate pattern.
It reminded me of Scales very much in that regard. Yeah. So, and even the way it was like lifted up and that kind of like misshaped the back of her head to look like a dragon's head.
It looked very triumphant. It did. It was a very triumphant look.
Yeah.
So she triumphed over her all her enemies, and she's standing there. She's got her whole army and everything. Tyrion throws down his hand. He says, "I'm not doing this anymore." And then she's like, "Take him away." And so then he's imprisoned. And then we get a really cool scene where Jon sees Daenerys walking off, and Arya just pops up like, "Yeah, I can get anywhere I want." like yeah, I'm here. He's like, "What? How'd you get here?" It's like, "What?" And she just pops up. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, it's like, "Hi, Ninja." He's like, "What are you doing here?" I think he was more surprised, like, less surprised that she survived and more surprised of like, how'd you get past the whole army?
Right.
So
what I do now.
Right.
So that was cool. They see her walking off. Tyrion and Jon have like a little exchange there. And the next thing we see is Tyrion, he's locked away, and Jon comes to visit him. They have a long conversation about how Jon needs to do this. He's always protected people. Who's the biggest threat now? It's obviously your queen. I still don't understand the part where Tyrion says, or the whole storyline that Jon loves her, but for some reason doesn't want to be her, like, with her or her king, or like, it was never explained why they can't love each other. I still am confused.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of that they can't love each other. It's that last episode when she really needed that human contact.
Yeah.
He, for whatever reason, was not able to provide it because of his own.
That's what I'm saying. We don't know why.
But we
don't know the answer to that.
I think it's. But I think what I got from it. Okay, so keep in mind. So I'm going to weave a little bit. That's in the books and also in the show. Okay. The Targaryens are raised knowing that they're going to end up with one of their relatives.
Okay.
You know, they're raised knowing that they're going to end up with their brother or sister, or if one of them dies beforehand, the next nearest cousin or whatever. Jon Snow grew up as a Stark. Okay. So I think what I got out of it was the reason he just couldn't go through with it, because she didn't bat an eyelash at, you know, she wasn't even phased that they were related, because going back to the books,
family mores that she'd been raised in is that we kind of date within the family, we preserve the bloodline and all that.
In the books, because one of the things that I don't think was really touched on in the first season is when Dany's brother sells her, that part where he walks in and she's in the tub and whatnot. He's been like sort of kind of touching her, like, not like when
they've had an inappropriate relationship previously.
Yeah, and that was just normal for her. You know, that was normal. So that part wasn't necessarily in the show, but I think the plan was always that Dany was always going to end up back with her brother at some point. So being with the family is a normalcy for her. Whereas for Jon Snow, it's like, but you're my aunt. And, you know, he's very much a Stark. And remember, the Starks are all about hubris. You know what I mean?
But not even that. I think he would have been able to deal with that aspect if she didn't go off the rails the way she did. Because they had two different conversations, one in the last episode and then one in this episode, where he's trying to convince her to come to her senses and not, like, burn the world alive, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then he got two confirmations that no, like, she is determined to liberate everyone.
The world.
And, liberate the world. And then, let's, have this crazy rule together. But he was like, no, let's rule the right way. So he was trying to it was like he was down, but he saw her change from this woman who he had fallen in love with, who was compassionate and who, cared about the people, to being someone who was completely fueled by her ego.
Yeah, and that's like, I'll disagree with Mariella. I don't think he had a hang-up over the fact that it was revealed that she was her aunt, because he didn't see himself that way. He didn't see himself as a Targaryen. He still viewed himself as a Stark more than anything else.
That's true.
Just because he got the knowledge that, okay, your bloodline's a little different, he doesn't look at her and see aunt.
Right.
Yeah. I disagree, though, because, it's one of those things we're going to agree to disagree.
Right.
But if you go back to before they have the war at the Wall, there's... No, wait, what was I thinking of? I'm sorry, I'm tired.
They were hooking up on the ship or whatever.
They were hooking up.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing that's crazy.
That it's at the end of last
it's clearly not in the show. This is why we're like all confused about it, and there's all these theories. That's a big sticking point, because that is where kind of the plot falls apart in these last few episodes, because they can't explain to us why was Jon in love with her so much. They're in love together. She loves him so much. But then he decides, I just can't do this. There was never anything speaking to that. If you guys have comments on what part of the episode that was where they said, oh, this is the reason why Jon can't love her or whatever. My thought, which is different than your guys' thought, is he was bound by loyalty, saying, I'm your queen. And he has a thing about boning queens. He can't do it. He's like, she's my queen. No longer can give you the D. That's it.
Well,
I just think it was bad
he
timing
smashed
for him,
after.
but that's just me. Like, it was a bad, like, she wanted to get very touchy-feely in that last episode.
Too clingy.
I wouldn't even say clingy. She was aggressive.
She's clingy like a dragon.
Yeah, they had just suffered a major setback. They were looking for a long siege. His mind was kind of on the ball, and she's having her issues. Balls. She's having her issues, and one of the ways she's trying to work through her issues was to get aggressive with him, and he was not receptive at that time because of the circumstances. Call it bad timing, bad luck, like, it happens.
Yeah.
And that's my takeaway from it. I could be wrong, but just like you said,
it's
indicative of this whole season, we've got all the major plot points, but we're missing a lot of the connective tissue that explains how we get there.
Yeah.
Well, two things. Because normally we get like a director's analysis of the episode, and we didn't get that this time. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what happens in the documentary piece next week, to see are they going to dissect that part of the of the final episode. But I'm really kind of bent on the fact, because like he said, he's hooked on hubris.
Right.
So I think he's kind of bent on the fact that he thought that she was this one person. And then now it's like you see that she's like kind of flipped.
Yeah, and even Tyrion in their conversation, he gives almost the exact same warning I saw on a lot of fan posts last weekend after this. She's doing what she did the entire show. It's just
now it's not.
It happened to be last time she was doing it to people who were genuinely evil, and we all cheered her on. Yeah. No one stopped to think that maybe she might do this to people we're less certain about their evilness to. Yeah. So it's not an issue that she's just a great person; it's that she's moderately bloodthirsty, and we've just
if you notice,
papered over it because she was killing the people we thought she deserved.
If you notice, like in the series, the people that she was killing progressively got less bad.
Yeah.
More
Like,
ambiguous.
yeah, it was more
Especially
ambiguous,
the
more
Tarleys
ambiguous.
and all
Yeah,
that.
the Tarleys. That was the one that was kind of the tipping point.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
the slave
the Tarley
masters-
one was
Tyrion was
like
like,
a
"Nah,
real
chill."
on the like.
Yeah.
You're on the fence on that one. You can see from a strict. This is what she has to do to establish herself.
Right.
But on the other hand, these guys, they were bound to an oath to fight for a side. They fought for a side. They fought honorably. They weren't out there killing men.
Yeah.
They were honorable soldiers. And this
Right.
goes back to kind of the thing I got hung up on last week, which is
But you weren't upset about her burning them, though. The Tarleys.
I would have if I'd been here to review that episode.
Oh, okay,
You're
you're pissing.
But that's why I'm saying, like, it
All
goes
right.
back to that a little bit. It's just like that's goes a little beyond what we'd expect in honorable
Exactly.
comment. And then, of
Fair
course,
enough.
at the start of this episode, Grey Worm does even
Yes,
more.
let's
of
talk
it.
about Grey Worm.
Yeah.
Because
So-
Grey Worm definitely kind of flew off the hinges, and he almost got to the point where he was like just as psychotic as she was. But then after that whole meetup
Mhm.
with all the lords and
Yeah.
ladies, what have you, he was like, "What would Missandei have done? She would have gone to Narth."
Yeah. Well, so that was at the end of the episode, but a little bit before that, where they had all the King's Landing or some of the remaining King's Landing soldiers.
What's left?
What's left of the army, and Grey Worm is standing there like, "Yo, I'm about to kill him."
No,
And that was
ready.
like. That was a cool little moment where John put his hand on it. He's like, "Are you touching me? Like, your hand is still on me, bro.
Bitch, please."
I will harm." And then when John walked away, he looked at him like, "I thought this motherfucker just touched me. I thought he just touched me." So anyways, so then he goes on and he slaughters the dudes from King's Landing, which it was an interesting thing because Davos was like, "Yo, John, let's move along and talk to Daenerys. I know you're trying to save these dudes' lives, but you're not going to be able to do it. He's definitely going to kill you." And so it was cool cinematically, that moment where John has to like walk away, knowing that at that moment that he walks away, all those guys
justice
are
is going to
dead.
happen. Yeah.
I gotta, since we brought up Davos,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta stop and talk a minute about him because I think for the longest time he's been one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I'm happy he lived.
He's
through
been a
this season.
steady
Right.
character.
Yeah.
He's always been not a guy that goes too far, and he's always been sort of reasonable.
Right.
He's been like the middle of the line, everyman, common sense kind of guy
Right.
throughout the entire show.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, as much as sometimes Tyrion tries to be that, he's too clever for his own good, which
right.
he eventually pretty much admits at this point.
Yeah.
But he's always just been, I'm just trying to get through this shit, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's just survive.
Like,
So what else did you have on Davos? What were you thinking?
No, I'm just gonna say I think for me, it was surprising how much I really liked him.
Like even his last line was just like he's up amongst all what's left of these nobles, and he's like, everyone's going their opinion on like, I don't know if my opinion really matters, but yeah, sure, let's make him king.
Well, before we jump ahead to that, we get all of this right. We get John talking to Tyrion. Tyrion saying, "Hey, John, you gotta handle your business. You gotta give her the long claw one last time, bro." To end all this,
Really fixated on that phrase. I'm just saying.
He's got a great sword. He had to use it.
Giggity.
So anyway, so he goes and sees Daenerys, and I thought that this was a really good written dialogue between the two.
Yes.
You get to see the nuance of like her turn to madness, so to speak, and how nuanced it is, and how torn he is between like, man, she's really saying the right things, but underneath those words, I can see how that translates. I can see how they don't have a
We're not
choice.
speaking the same language.
Yeah, we're not speaking the same
And
language.
her body language is really like you could see almost like the look of delusion in her
Yeah, like,
eyes.
yeah.
Like, this bitch is crazy. Like,
And John's just like giving her that kiss, and that kiss at the end, I was like, oh, that kiss feels really awkward, right? And it was awkward because he was trying to grab for his sword.
yeah.
Well, no, he uses the little dagger, not the
Yeah,
sword.
well, or his
She
dagger.
does not get the long claw.
Yeah, she does not get the long claw. He shortchanges her,
Yeah.
which you know is the death of any woman. If you shortchange them, they're going to be very upset. And Marianne's looking at me like, you probably always shortchanged. Anyways, he shanks her, And then we
He
get
did shake her.
one of the
Yeah, that was
coolest
a pure
scenes,
prison
I think,
shame.
from the series is when Drogon comes out. He's like, "Yo, what?" Oh, wait, before that, when Jon is going to go see her up in the
Oh yeah, and he lets
before
her
the
in.
and
That
Drogon
was
gets up like, "Yo, who?"
That was
Okay.
tough because it was like
my
for a
dude.
minute you thought he was just gonna like walk through the
Yeah.
doorway, and then it was like, oh shit, it's a dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically he's hidden
Jon.
under the snow and like
What?
little
It was the
debris.
snow.
That's
or the
not snow, those
ashes?
ash.
By that
Ashes.
time it's snow.
No, it's ash.
It's ash.
It's ash from the city still
Because
burning.
you got to think it's like almost like a volcano hit the city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then the very next day, it's like
Like it
beautiful.
was at the
It's-
start of the episode, last
Yeah.
episode, but towards the end of the episode, I saw it more as actual.
Well,
snow.
when they were at the council, you saw how it was all sunny, right?
Yeah.
Like so that's
but that was weeks later.
yeah, but I mean,
But does it just go from snow to being
Yeah,
like
'cause
80 degrees? I mean,
'cause that was
it's
a
not-
lot of
global
snow.
warming hadn't hit yet
Yeah.
in West
Remember,
Coast.
remember the whole big tagline for the series is "Winter is coming." They were expecting a long winter, and it had just started. So I kept expecting winter to keep creeping south. That's what it was supposed to be doing.
That's a fair assessment.
once again, I think in the series it's not very clear because all of a sudden it's super sunny,
Yeah.
like in the next scene or whatever. It's another thing that we're just kind of like, wait, was winter coming or was it because the Night King was coming? Like you didn't really explain that. Now the Night King is dead, so now it's summer again, or like what? Now we don't give a fuck about the weather. We've been talking about winter this entire time. 10
We've been
years.
talking about this winter for 10 years,
And
and now
now-
it kind of wanders off at the last episode.
Game of Thrones has the same weathermen we do in DC. It's like they don't know what's going on. That's so annoying. Thanks for bringing that up because now I'm really annoyed. But you get this cool scene.
That's what I'm here for, my man.
You get the cool scene with Jon walking by, but it shows that Drogon recognizes him as like, all right, he's a Targaryen.
Right,
But
he was still
Drogon
pissed.
was not on his job, and then his queen got shanked. Yeah,
But he didn't think he had to be because he's like, you with the Targaryen beef. So,
yeah,
he was like, he didn't suspect that. He's
Yeah.
like, I saw y'all smang.
yeah.
You smang right in front of me, and then you stab
I thought you were
everybody.
gonna give me another little brother.
You know what I'm saying? But then
So-
he was like,
Then that leads to one of the coolest scenes where Drogon comes up in there after seeing his queen slain, and it's like, "Yo, what's happening, mommy?"
That's
and then
with
he's
the
like,
snout trying to get her to wake up, that whole thing.
"Yeah, that was very cute." But then I thought it was very cool when he was like, "Man, fuck this Iron Throne to my mama," and then he burns it and melts it down so that no one will ever sit on the Iron Throne.
On one hand, in regards to the whole series, I like that. It's very symbolic. It's a very George, like I'm sure that's like one of the key plot points that Martin gave them. This is how this ends. On the other hand, lack of connective tissue. Why does the dragon give a shit about the throne?
And how does he know that the throne is something to burn?
Like,
but did he, or was it just like, okay, it just was a coincidence? I mean, I know it's not coincidence.
He just
but
wanted to
somehow
burn something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he's looking for something, or because if you go back to last season, remember when Drogon and Jon had that interaction where they there's like the dragon stare or whatever, like where it recognized. So my thought on that was because by the time Drogon got there, Dany was already dead.
Yeah.
So she had, however she communicates with the dragon, she was already dead. You know,
right?
And there's a little bit where the dragon is staring at Jon.
Yeah.
And to me, it felt almost like a silent, take her out of here, and maybe his last thing was burn the throne, you know, or something. That
this gets into what we've been saying is
but
like
that's that connection.
we should this should have been explained somehow.
I should know it. Well, because Jon is like cowering from the dragon.
Well, he's a little
He was
twitchy.
always
He's like,
afraid of them because he wasn't raised a Targaryen.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I mean,
even she was afraid of them when they were like growing up and they were going through their
what
like
to do.
adolescence phase. Yeah.
Because remember, there had to be, at the end of the day, he did ride them, you know, and you know, they did respond to him. So there had to be some sort of connection, of bond, something. So to me, you know,
but figuring out what the extent of that bond is, whether the dragon's actions were some either conscious or subliminal instruction from Jon, or is this just literal Deus Ex Machina? The writer decided to end things this way. We don't know for sure, and this is not a question we should be asking ourselves right now. You've had all this time to
To
communicate this
figure it
to
out
us.
exactly. It shouldn't be this like nebulous, right?
Yeah.
To figure
It's like
out
a lack of
to
closure.
figure out like so the dragon knew and then okay.
Like
Anyway.
I kept saying last week, I'm sure when G.R.R. Martin
Right.
finishes writing these books, there'll be explanations for all this because he's going to have all this.
Right.
He's going to have a novel this thick covering the 6 hours we've watched.
Exactly. Right.
All right.
So-
Those gaps.
So after taking her away, then
We cut to 6
we
weeks later.
cut to later. And it's like, oh yeah, John's he's
Everyone's
locked
here
up.
now.
What about Grey Worm's demeanor says that he didn't kill John on sight? Explain that to me.
So the other question is one again something that the show maybe should have shown instead of making us guess is no one knows what happens in that throne room unless John tells them.
John would, though. Hubris.
He would. I'm not saying
Yeah.
he would. Like I'm not
Yeah.
saying that the events of the show should have happened. He absolutely would. But the way he tells it, who he tells it to, would explain why Grey Worm doesn't just immediately stab a bitch.
Okay,
Because
but that's
I definitely would see him doing that if
But-
John just walks out the door and says, "Oh, by the way, I just stabbed your queen."
What they
Grey
said
Worm
at the
would take
beginning
him right
was
out.
very specific that he put a knife through her heart. So it's like, how did
exactly
they know
how
that?
do they know that?
No
but he
one was
probably
there.
told them.
He would say.
But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, at that moment,
His
I'm
hubris of honesty
thinking
and all that.
they don't have a queen at that moment. There's no one to lead them except for Grey Worm, since he's the leader of the army. I think he would take justice upon himself, just like he did with the the King's Landing army.
He would follow
And
his
just-
last orders,
he would
if
follow his
nothing
last
else.
orders.
He might be
Yeah.
doing what he wants, but he'd use the excuse of, "Well, my last orders were to kill
He's
him."
like, you've killed the person I've been sworn to protect. Now I must kill you. Not
Yeah.
put you in prison and think about it 6 weeks later
Wow.
and come to a council where they get to decide. It's like, oh, I guess I'm not in charge anymore. You were just in charge of the entire 7 kingdoms.
Well, not that I think he has any more will to live at this point, but I do think that deep down he knew that if he killed John on the spot, that it would start a war between the
But
North
would he
and
care?
the
Like,
Unsullied.
but this goes back to my
But then
complaints
his
about
men
him
would
last week. Is
die.
he didn't care about the ramifications of his actions last week. Why would he care about them now?
And his last orders were thinking, we're about to go to war with the world. Like, that's what it was like, oh, we're not done. We're about to go conquer here, conquer
Yeah.
here. So it's like, he went
If his
worse.
excuse for killing everyone last week is because that's what his order was, regardless of whether it's been countermanded by anyone else, it's the same thing this week. His last order was kill everything.
Yeah. Well, I think at that point he was like torn, and then once she went on the rampage after the bells rung, he kind of like all of his grief and all of his rage from
Like I said, I absolutely
got projected onto that.
not to
situation.
rehash everything from last week. He snapped,
Yeah.
but it's
But I mean, they did have the scene in this episode where it was like she told, like her orders were to kill everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had that moment where John was talking to Grey Worm, like right before they killed everybody. He's like, "I'm doing orders for my queen." He's like, "What were your orders?" Like to kill everybody. And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, please don't." And he's like, "Nah, I am." It's like, "Oh, okay. I'll just go talk to her then."
Yeah.
BRB.
But there was that point that Dany made when she's talking to Jon Snow, and you know, he's like basically shaking her at some point, and he's like, "What about the children? What about the innocents?" And she's just like, "Well, Cersei thought that was going to make me weak."
Right.
You know?
She kept rationalizing all of her irrational behavior.
I mean, you know,
to one degree she was right if things had played out differently, but by the time everyone was surrendering, that was it. It was done. Cersei no longer had any control.
yeah.
She had lost control.
I still think that the people of King's Landing were trash anyway. But I do have a issue
When
with
in doubt,
with
kill
this-
them all.
When in doubt, just decimate the city.
Right.
No, I mean,
Oh my gosh.
clearly that's wrong or whatever. But you know, all the traumas from like Ned dying and like in the books, when you read the books, they're really terrible people at King's Landing. They're not great people.
I
No.
mean, it's like your average New Yorker.
Yeah. Well,
Funny.
so.
Well, let's talk about the meetup though.
So
Yeah.
so now we're at the meetup and Grey Worm comes with Tyrion, who's still a
chains.
prisoner at this point. Apparently his sentencing for death was stayed after the queen died, so they kept him alive. Again, I just don't understand how somebody who's cool with killing everyone is just like, all right, I'm gonna let this guy who Daenerys definitely sentenced to death, and this other guy who probably killed her live. I still don't get that. But he brings him to the council meeting, and
let's skip over your obsession with Grey Worm for a moment and talk about this to me hilarious council of the forgettable, because of all
council of the forgettable
of all of these lords and heads of houses and key players in the Game for the Thrones, look at who we have at the end of the day. We have
nobody.
We have about 12 people, of which half of which I can identify, and even they are people I'd say, who the hell were these people 10 years ago? You've got Sam Tarley, who's technically on, AWOL from Night's Watch, representing his minor house. You've got some guy from Dorne, who's not the guy I remember from Dorne, so I guess he's there.
Dorne got killed.
Yeah. I remember his face, because I think he was his brother.
But I mean, of the Dorne subplot, this is the guy who we never saw anything about. But he's there representing Dorne now.
Right, but they survived.
This is who's left.
Yeah,
Wait, did all the Sand Snakes die?
Yeah.
All of them died, right?
All the Sand Snakes.
And then you had the last Greyjoy, so a lot of people got massacred between the whole conflict with the Lannisters.
But I mean, that's so important. And not only that, it's one, like that one guy who stands up and is like, well, I'll be king. Who the hell was he?
He was
Umber.
Yeah, he was Umber.
Oh, the guy from Last Heart?
Remember, he married the Frey chick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He married he was I also in the books he was the only one not killed at the Red Wedding, because he did in fact.
How the fuck is he? I'm sorry, pardon my French.
Well, that's
how is he at the council sitting next to Sansa, Bran, and Arya?
That's my point.
And he was at the Red Wedding where her brother was murdered brutally with his wife.
Because
he was part of it.
Well, because you remember, so we all know that Tywin was behind that, and then we all know that Walder.
I get it.
So the whole thought was, with Robb out of the way. And the Lannisters had Sansa. If Umber was married to a Frey, they were supposed to put him in Winterfell.
Okay, I get all that.
Yeah.
However, he's part of the Red Wedding.
He was a patsy, though.
He was, but it doesn't matter. Like, Littlefinger was a patsy who had done all this, like, playing or whatever. They were like, yo, let's kill him. I don't think the Umber dude would be... although Sansa did put him in his place by saying, like, sit your ass down.
No, but here's
the thing. But, I mean,
that
also brings up the whole thing is, like, this was the council of D-list players.
Right. Like, this is what's left over, because everybody else is either dead or what happened.
You no longer have a representative House Lannister or House Frey. Like, it's all these minor houses who were nobody... 10 years ago in real time, and however long this took place according to the show. All these, they were at the start of the show, it was like there were 12 major houses, and of those, I think only 2 of them are represented at this council. Like, that's it. Everyone else is these, third, fourth rate houses.
Yeah.
That's what's left.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is, going back to Umber, I think I have this right, so don't kill me if I don't, but I believe for the insult done to Walt that Robb dealt to Walder by not holding his promise.
Yeah.
I think it was Robb's intention to put Umber as the guy to inherit should something happen to him.
Okay.
Which is why they allowed him to marry the girl, embed her, and then kill the Starks.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, whatever the case, they're all the council of the forgettable,
The
as
right.
we have deemed
Council
them.
of Misfit Toys.
They sit there and they're talking. Grey Worm brings out Tyrion, and he's like, okay, Tyrion has to die, Jon has to die. He's talking to the council, which I don't understand, because they're in his charge. Why does he have to bring them to the council? He's literally...
I think it's largely he doesn't know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
He's way
his
beyond
entire
whatever
life
he's
he's
trying
been
to
a
do.
slave. Right.
Like his job was to be the head of Dany's armies, and without Dany, he's kind of floundering. He doesn't. He's angry. He knows things aren't right. He's not happy with it, but he doesn't. He doesn't have
3 weeks of floundering. Never did it occur to him to just stab them.
But he didn't have that. But he was pissed and he snapped. But I don't think he was just pure evil.
Remember, you're talking about a guy who's not used to emoting. Remember, all will, all everything was stripped from them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
But he got it back. Like
that's a major decision that he was not prepared to make.
Missandei got he watched her get a headshot.
Going back to what we keep saying, there's this missing scene of like, say, Davos stepping between them, saying like, "Oh, let's hold off a second.
Yeah.
Let's get some people who, before we do something that's going to cause even more problems, let's give it a minute." Calm down, and then once he's calmed down for a minute, it's easier to make him calm down for 3 weeks, and then you get some kind of council, like, we're going to figure this out at the council, and just, like, you could see Davos spearheading something like that.
Right.
And that's probably a scene we should have gotten, and it's probably a scene that, again, is in the books whenever they come out.
Yeah.
But here, it's like, it's whiplash. You go from, there's no way he's not going to kill a bitch, to he's just there.
Right.
And then he's listening.
Disconnected.
And so now they're having this big council meeting. Everybody's talking. Which, by the way, Sansa never talks. She barely talks, which she tells
She
the
lets other people do talking for her.
Exactly.
Which is,
so,
the kingly thing.
That was a little bit like, what? She's not saying anything. But then, Grey Worm, he's giving everybody the floor. And then he starts listening to Tyrion, who's the prisoner, who he just told to shut up.
To be fair, the first time Tyrion speaks... To be fair, the first time Tyrion tries speaking up, he does tell him, "Shut the fuck up, bitch."
Yeah. And then he's like, "No, I'm not going to shut up." Or in his words, he's
like, the council says, "No, let's hear Dumbass's opinion. He's done so well for us so far."
So then he speaks and basically says, Bran should be the king. He's going to be the new king. And it's like, wait, how did the prisoner go from being in prison to basically setting something up where he is going to be the... Like,
well, the council was like,
can we also talk about how Tyrion just decides, by the way, your epithet is going to be Bran the Broken, no matter what, and we're just going to keep rolling with that until it sticks, whether Bran wants to be known as the Broken King or not.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about...
It's a good thing he doesn't care about this shit anymore, because, bitch, I would kill you just for that.
Like, let's talk about how Bran turns into the king of quippers all of a sudden. Like, he goes from not being able to speak to, like, all these one-liners, like, this is all I had planned. It's like, wait a minute, you're the Three-Eyed Raven. You don't care about nothing but the past. Why all of a sudden you're like, yep, this is exactly how I had it planned, and then making jokes. Like, he's making jokes like, what do you think I'm here for?
I don't think he made a joke. I think he just kind of knew.
I can see where Bran's coming, because I'm the kind of person, like, I will kind of roll through life and watch things happen around me, knowing how it's going to turn out while everyone else is going crazy and nuts.
Exactly.
And like, yeah, that is pretty much what I expected. You know, like, I could see him having that kind of attitude. Where, again, coming from, he's the keeper of the history. The more you know, the better grasp you have on history.
Exactly.
The more you can use that to predict, to figure out. Exactly. We all just repeat shit.
Exactly.
People are very predictable in the long run.
Yeah, but also in a way, both the show and the books kind of set, to some extent, I would say, set this up. Again, not wonderfully executed,
right?
But in the Stark history, those who were named Bran were generally builders or something,
Bran
right?
The builder, yeah.
Right. So, like, there was Bran who built the wall, after the first run-in with the Night King or whatever. Right. So, to me, this is the Great Night came and the Night King lost, and now everything's destroyed. So he's here to build something.
Yeah.
To build something from the ashes, as it were.
Okay.
But again, it's just poorly executed in terms of explaining how that was going to work.
I get it. I get it. I like that.
Some conversation between Tyrion and Bran to put the seed of why Tyrion would make this choice.
Exactly.
Other than previous conversation you had with them a couple of seasons ago, they don't talk at all, I believe, this season.
They do. Yeah. They did talk, but again, it doesn't show us. So
Tyrion doesn't see any wisdom. Like, there's no real impetus for why Tyrion would make this decision.
So again, before they go to the fight, if you go back to before they fight the Night King, Tyrion is talking to Bran. And he says something about the kid who went to the edge of the world and came back. That's a story I'd like to hear.
Yeah, he did say that. Remember, he's like, we have time. They were like, we're waiting for the end of the world.
Right.
So they sat in that room and they were talking for hours while they were waiting for the Night King to show up.
Exactly. So what I got out of this episode is Tyrion kind of got there based on that conversation that we never see. Because the one thing, again, that has been steadfast about the show, at least, is Tyrion's interactions with people always has some sort of payoff in the end. You know what I mean? Right. But Bran was the only one where we didn't get to see him really have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But when he made this choice, it's like there must have been something that Bran said to him in that conversation that clicked with Tyrion as, at this moment, this is the guy we need.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
right.
I mean, I think it's, I don't know. I feel like there should have been some just, I don't know, maybe lip service paid to the fact that Sansa and Tyrion are still married. Since she didn't speak at all, be like, let my husband speak, or so, like just some type of like. It was just very weird to go from like I'm about to execute this dude, shut up, to like soliloquy, right? But and then everybody just be like, you know what? Yeah, like let's go with Bran, and then Bran all of a sudden being like, yeah, man,
that's why I came here.
That's why I came here, motherfucker. Game up.
But he probably got that insight through the conversation too, especially once they realized that Jon wasn't going to do what he needed to do when he needed to do it.
Exactly.
Like he did it, but it was like too little, too late. So now, like he said, if Jon was made the king, or if he was killed, it was going to start an issue.
So Bran is basically the Doctor Strange of Game of Thrones, of Westeros. He saw all this coming. He's like, "There's only one way that we win," and this was the one way. Speaking of Jon gets his fate is to be sent
back to square one,
back to the Wall, which, in my opinion, is like there's no reason to go back to the Wall. There's no whites. It's such a ridiculous.
So they pay very, very thin lip services to saying there's always going to be a place for us to put inconvenient people and bastards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But at a more practical thing, the Wall was there to protect against something that is no longer there that needs protecting, unless there's some more mythology that says, well, he's going to come back someday. In which case, they got to fix the wall. It's got a giant hole in it, which someone should probably care about. Either way.
Yeah, exactly. So then he goes off and he's like king beyond the wall with all the wild.
Yeah, I mean
that's
they give you a quick subverse, like everyone who was sad about Ghost not getting his pet and Tormund just disappearing from the series. He gets back to Castle Black and who's waiting for him? Giant head of red hair. It's Tormund.
That was great.
He's there for the bromance. He brought the dog.
There was joys and cheers when we saw Tormund that he had survived and he's chilling out at the wall there.
And this kind of pays back to a little bit of the conclusion that Jon came to last season after he was resurrected, saying, I can't be head of the Night's Watch anymore. Yeah. And it turns out, even though they send him to the Wall, he's like, I'm not going to do this again. He basically just packs up with the wildlings and goes against the Wall, and no one's there to stop him. So he just disappears, whether that would have consequences down the yard. Like I could see, if you want to go into like the expanded universe of Game of Thrones, Grey Worm might be pissed about that, because it looks like he was basically duped.
But he went completely the other direction, though.
Yeah, but if he finds out, well, the compromise punishment for Jon was that he'd be stuck at Castle Black watching, shit happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Ice dry.
Yeah.
Instead, he apparently went off and became king somewhere else. Like, Grey Worm might be pissed if he hears that.
Yeah.
That is not what he wanted.
Yeah, but how would they get word of that unless someone snitched? Because it's like no one really knew much about the wildlings at all before that whole situation.
Him not being at Castle Black would probably get back. Again, it depends on whoever would continue the story, how they want to write it. I could see it getting back and being a cause of problem. Like I'm actually really, really interested to know if that's the ending that Martin had for Snow, if that's the one the television guys came up, because they wanted to. Because going back to what I said last week about any type of these fantasy situations where you have a hero who's killed and brought back to life, they don't get their happy ending, they don't ride off into the sunset. I don't think Martin would have done that for Jon Snow either. I don't know what he was, but him just happily becoming king beyond the Wall seems a little too convenient, a little too trite, and it seems more like something the TV producers wanted to do to try and make everyone happy.
Yeah, at the same time, he's always kind of been exception to the rule from from him having that facade of being the bastard child to come. It turns out, holy shit, he's a Targaryen, you know, and having die, come back to life. But maybe his purpose, so to speak, hasn't been fulfilled yet.
I mean, there's some ways I could see it happening. Like, it could be, if it's, depending on how it's written eventually in the books, it does smack a little bit of, the hero who died and came back when he was done with his task, disappears somewhere. If you want to literally, like, sometimes they interpret beyond the wall being beyond, like, that could be him just kind of disappearing into history.
Right.
I think they make it a little too pat in the TV series to really follow that trope. It seems more like a happy ending rather than he goes off into, history kind of thing that a lot of them do.
Well, talking about happy endings, for me, like, I like steaks. You know what I mean? Like T-bones or
I was about to
filet
say,
mignon.
now I'm hungry, man.
No, but I like steaks in these shows, and I feel like this show, the stakes were always very high. You never knew who was going to die, and then at the end of it, it's like pretty much like happy ending for everyone. Everyone sails off to their happy ending, except for a couple people. So I feel like
who you saw coming for most part.
Exactly. It's almost telegraphed of who like if I had to guess earlier on, I'd be like, oh yeah, this seems like how it would go. I probably wouldn't have called Bran becoming the king, but I would have guessed everything else. Jon has to end up back where he was. Arya goes off. It's almost like they reset it to season 3, like when we were all happy with the show. Like Arya's way back off in her land doing her training. Jon's at the wall. Sansa's in the north.
Sansa's putting on pretty outfits.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they reset it to the happiest time.
Sam's a tyrant husband.
And Tyrion's hand to the king.
Tyrion's drinking somewhere.
So it was kind of like a weird thing, but like you said the SS spinoff. Arya went off to her. Wait, stay with us, Marianne. We're almost there. We're covering this. Arya gets to sail off.
She basically says, "What's west of Westeros? I want to go take a look." And she gets a ship and she takes HMS Spinoff and goes off for
there. And there was a really cool shot where you see all three Starks, like
the three that can walk.
Yeah, exactly. I thought they should show Bran like rolling through his kingdom.
Like,
right?
Basically they're tracking the 4 kind of like key characters from season. Like when in the first season, it was very much they were subverting expectations this time, but it followed the Stark children.
Right.
Yeah.
So they follow each one of the Stark children, except the one that can't walk, because I guess that's just difficult to make work with all those
Or the
shots.
one who's the most important, because he's the one who actually won the Game of Thrones.
And
he won playing. Like, the whole thing is Game of Thrones. He won the Game of Thrones, and we don't see him.
Fair. Mm-hmm.
He's not part of that ending montage. The other 3 are.
And then I thought it was, and then I guess to someone to close it out, they come back with the book, A Song of Fire and Ice, which apparently Samuel Tarly wrote.
No, he said someone else wrote it.
Oh, someone else wrote it, but he helped or something.
With the title.
And he helped with the title. And then in the book,
Brienne.
Tyrion is not in there at all, which I think is weird considering he killed Tywin Lannister, who was one of the biggest Lannisters, and he was hand to the queen. I feel like he probably would have had
He'd get a
some
footnote or
mention.
something, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was kind of a weird thing. And then they were all taught there. And then
I wonder how much of that is true and how much of that just, you can tell that small council is a small council that is constantly going to be digging on each other. Like, it's just, they are the the quirky, quippy, cynical.
The council.
They're just going to snipe at each other. It's not going to be like taken personally, but they're all going to be like, especially with Bronn.
Okay, let's I called it. I told you guys Bronn was going to make it.
Yeah. Oh, that he was going to live.
Yeah, like Bronn's going to make it to the end.
The
guy who had no stake in anything, who's like, yo, if you pay me enough.
And then he ends up owning all the, like, having
Master
the highest
of coin.
Yeah, the master of coin, having the, all the coin in the land, which is cool. And then his first act of coin is to rebuild the brothels. It's like, wait, we need food
Brienne's
for
like,
the
we need
poor.
ships, we need food,
Nah.
brothels. He's like, I'm gonna get that foursome.
Trust me.
Y'all cheated me out that foursome with that old guy came in.
Tyrion seconds.
Right.
It's like, trust me, if we don't get these brothels up and running, there's going to be problems. I don't know how well the whores are going to be, considering like they've seen so many people burnt turned into ash. Like, I
I know, that's what happened last time. That's what happened last time he tried to get his rocks off, is they couldn't stop talking about the
Yeah.
Like, I heard that somebody got skinned alive. You know, it's like, can we stop talking about this and try to get it off here?
Like, what does that actually entail? Building more brothels? Like, all right, let's get all the orphans that don't have parents anymore, and what is he?
Someone's been putting thought into how to start his own brothel over there. It's just
Not I. I was just like, damn,
I go raid some orphanages.
That's that's a crazy thought to like just like all right, we got to rebuild these problems.
I mean, it is the oldest profession in the world, so it's highly important.
That is true.
Got to keep the civilization.
And you know what? If there's a lot of despair, if you could go and get a little nookie.
It could prevent a lot of wars.
That could help bring the 7 kingdoms together. Or 6 kingdoms, because Sansa is... During the council meeting, we forgot about this part. Sansa did speak once, where she said, actually, we just going to take the north.
Love you, but
it's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're all going to come together as
right.
the king, Bran. And then she was like, yo, I love you, Bran, but I've been trying to be a queen for a long time.
She's like, if I can't be queen of the 7
I don't think it was
kingdoms,
much her personally trying to be a queen, but she also recognized that the people that she was leading, the Northmen, they were not having it anymore.
Yeah.
They're not having a 7 kingdoms.
They're tired of being dragged into everyone else's problems.
Yeah.
They want to just deal with themselves for at least a while.
And conveniently, I happen to have been the queen up there, so I'll just go ahead and take care of that situation. So that all worked out. And I don't know, that kind of wraps up where everybody is in the Game of Thrones, in this big game, this big epic that we've been watching for 8, 10 plus years.
Yeah.
I don't know. This
review?
review is almost anticlimactic as the show, right? Like we should have some big. I don't even know if we're going to sing this time.
Yeah, no, we should do the sing and then.
Anyways, that was our.
We tried.
So that was our review. We just went through everything. I don't know. Tell us what you thought about it. You can send us some messages. Let us know what you guys think happened in this big thing. Whether you liked it, whether you agree with our points, or maybe we're wrong. Maybe
you wanted your car says.
I know. Like
Behind the Wall says, "Fuck Jon Snow. You can take him back."
Beyond the Wall, he wants to kill Jon Snow.
So there was definitely some gripes about Jon Snow.
Jon Snow's a bitch.
But I don't know. Do you want to explain why you didn't like Jon Snow? What about you upset him?
Have the last word beyond the
Come
wall.
on, this is our fearless captain coming back for the last episode.
I'm sorry. I'm all up in between your legs.
Whoa.
I've owned. This is my first season. Like I'm in the new with you guys. But I just didn't like how he could have prevented everything. I know he's supposed to be good of heart, and that's what led his decision making and all that. But still, if you are a good leader, you need to make those hard choices.
Yeah.
And you didn't.
Like a true military.
So
hard
I'm just
choices.
saying.
Yeah. Well,
he did at the end.
He made a limp choice.
But I also
it was too late. It
Yeah.
was too late.
But I also think that's been like, and I'll just leave with this. I think that's always been the point of Game of Thrones is all the characters that you thought were going to do something or were going to be about something, you thought about that life. How everybody has a point of failure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Everyone's flawed. Even the things that you think are admirable about them can become a fatal flaw.
Right.
And that's definitely true in Jon's case.
In this case, yeah. So like him and Dany, and that's the part that I think is really fascinating about the two of them is those two and everything else that they did. They were to the point, justified. But when it came to the point that mattered the most, both of them were failures. You know, Jon because he couldn't get out of his own way, and her because her ego was just it was a monstrosity, And so there are these people that we were like, well, these are good people. And, and I guess if you wanted to apply it in today's, some context in today, that's like really what we mean when we say is how do good people allow things to happen? Like this was a shining example of this is how it happens. Yeah. Everybody might have the best of intentions.
Right.
Yeah.
But intentions go to shit.
Yeah.
When it really comes down to it.
Yeah.
I think everything
your
you
intentions
just said,
are laudable.
I think everything you just said could be
exactly.
stacked up, and you could put that into the same pot as that's what the writers gave to us. Like their intentions were good, it all went to shit, and they left us with a what burger. That's how I feel. It's like exactly what you said, and I think that's a good place to wrap it up. They're like they tried very hard to make this happen, to condense everything that we wanted to see, everything George R.R. Martin's vision into the books. from the books into
They hit the
show.
plot points they were
They
given,
hit the
but
plot
they
points they were
didn't
given,
have
but
the
they missed
strength
the
to
mark,
really connect.
and it fell apart. And I think that's the last slang that George R. R. Martin put into this, which was our hopes and dreams of what this series could have been. That was the last unexpected death. We didn't see that one coming.
He was going to kill his own TV show at the end.
Killed his own TV show at the end. So, that's about it for us. Listen, we really enjoyed Game of Thrones, regardless of what we're talking about here. They gave us an amazing series for about 8-10 years. I keep saying 8 to 10 years because I can't remember when I started.
Season 8, 10 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been
between the last.
I've been reading the books or whatever for a long time too. So they gave us something amazing. They gave us something incredible. The way that they put it together, the way that it looked visually, cinematically. I don't know that we would have ever been happy with what we got for the series finale.
Mm-hmm.
So to judge them this harshly, I feel like is somewhat unfair. And I'm the one who's doing the most harsh judging because I was very upset.
You have to remember, like, the biggest things that they did to make a note for themselves as being this, like, subversive, defying characteristics. Like, at the end of season 1, when they kill off the main character. At the beginning of season 3 when they do the whole Red Wedding. How many times can you just do something unexpected before everyone sees everything coming and no one's ever going to be happy with you do because you've just blown up so much of the show or so much of the story because that's straight from J.R. Martin.
We were just about to close it out, but I forgot. Brienne didn't get any closure for her storyline except for the fact that she gets to write Jaime's story in the book, which to take one of the strongest female characters and to like condense her to like kind of writing about her love.
She was on the Diminished Council.
Yeah, she was on the Diminished Council. So I don't know. That was just another thing. I thought. Listen. Oh, here's one thing that we could do that would be very cool. To take this out. How about we just rewrite the end this last season? And what would you have?
How about
liked
we get HBO to film it?
Exactly. What would you have liked to have seen as your ending to the Game of Thrones, starting at the beginning of this last season? Start with Marianne.
Ooh. I was actually really happy that I think as a surprise, I would have actually liked if maybe everybody died.
Just cataclysmic global event, like just...
Yeah, okay, I'll be honest. I would have liked, actually, if after everything, like, I could have lived with Bran as the king or something, but I would have liked if there was some weird return of the Night King or something.
Gotcha.
Because I'm a big fan of magic and things, and so I tend to believe that things have to be balanced, right? So if you have dragons over here, then that means that there's got to be something growing over there.
Right.
Yeah, you know what
it's the same thing, like I said, like, it's a common thing with magic when someone gets resurrected, they don't wander off to a happy ending.
Exactly.
There's some kind of price to pay for that.
There's a price
and we
for
haven't
everything.
seen that.
Well, perhaps in that instance where Daenerys burned down the city in a fiery blaze, she kind of imbalanced the system, so to speak. I want to see Bran Morgan to the
let's see what you got.
Bran Morgan to the freaking dragon.
So that's you just wanted to see that.
And I do agree with you that Brienne kind of deserved more than to be kind of just dumbed down to. But I do want to. I was looking forward to kind of seeing, and it left you in anticipation of what was going to become of the council when they were all bickering and doing all their stuff. And I want to see what's going to happen with Arya.
See why?
I wanted the end of the series just to be a shot of J.R. Martin shooting up in his bed, having a nightmare, and suddenly just like looking at the camera and saying, "This is what'll happen if I don't get off my ass and finish writing these books before these people start filming."
That's pretty much what happened.
The dynasty of it.
Books matter. Books matter.
All right, are you guys ready? I think I'm gonna wow you with how I would have liked to see it. All right, boom. You start. All right, so boom. All right, so
it's too late for boom. Wrap it up.
All right, so boom. Here's what happens. Start of the season. Everybody's waiting. There's this big fight that's supposed to be happening at Winterfell. Night King decides to flank, go down to King's Landing, and start sacking the city to take over King's Landing. Meanwhile, at the wall, they're like, yo, what just happened? He's taking over King's Landing. So then they have to take all their troops from Winterfell, go down to King's Landing to sack the city. At that point, Arya kills the Night King. All those zombies die, but the city is still there with people fighting or whatever. Daenerys at that time sees her chance to go and burn the entire city, and that's when she's like, I'm going to go ahead and burn them. And they're like, no, wait, the Night King's dead. We don't have to do that. And then she's like, screw it anyway, and burns them all. And that's when they see, like, yo, she's really turned. She didn't have to do that. You know what I'm saying? Now, Cersei, she's killed in that fire. We still get the Clegane Bowl. Okay, Daenerys begins to be on the throne, right? And they're still saying that, oh wait, we have to kill all these people, or we have to still kill the people from King's Landing. There's more people to be killed. And they're like, no, you've already sacked the city. You already burnt it. You killed the dead. What more do you want? And then she's like, I want vengeance. I want my da-da-da-da-da. And she's going crazy. At that point, that's when Brienne comes in, kills Daenerys, becomes the Queen Slayer, and take Jaime's namesake. At that point, Jon Snow,
trips on a
I know, right? At this point, Jon Snow is very distraught by this. He has to sentence Brienne to death. He doesn't really want to. He wants to save her. Tyrion comes in and releases her as he did Jaime, saying, like, you love my brother, I love you. You're getting bored by this CY, but this is fucking fire, bro. I'm telling you. If this would have been how the series ended, everyone would be like, yo, this shit was so dope! Okay, so then he releases Brienne. She goes off as a sellsword. She goes off looking for Arya. Because Arya still kills the Night King or whatever, and then she...
You said that right.
Yeah, right. She still kills... But then she... Yeah, I wouldn't take that away. That was fucking awesome. There's no way. I would have just had it in King's Landing as opposed to thing. She would have stuck in or whatever. And then Sansa and Tyrion become the rulers on the Iron Throne.
Someone give him a budget so I can go to sleep.
Yeah. So anyways, that's how I would have had it. Sansa and Tyrion. Exactly. And then Bran, we figured out that he knew this all along, and he's like, this is how it should have been. This is how it's always been. Instead of him all of a sudden being like, I knew that. That kind of annoyed me. So anyway, that's how I would have written it. That's what I would have done.
All of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again.
So, yeah, maybe if I come back in another life, I can jump on these books sooner, and I can become a screenwriter, so I can do it. Anyways, peace and love to the guys who created this, D.B. Weiss and David Benioff. You guys did an amazing job bringing this all together. We know we have gripes. We get annoyed. You know you're probably annoyed with us that we're talking shit about your thing. But if you would have brought me in to write it, that would have been a much better ending. People would have been fucking loving that shit.
Look, dude, you write your books, and
I know,
I'll
right?
tell Martin.
And then I'll have Martin come in and rewrite the end of my book like, nah, I should have ended like this. I'll be like, no, I wanted a happy ending. Anyway, we've been talking long enough. Everybody's very, very tired. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being a part of this. Oh, high five. We almost Marianne, give me one, too.
What's our next recap show?
It has been
Swamp Thing, Watchmen.
Let
us know in the
Why don't we
comments.
get suggestions from our
Suggestions?
viewers?
Yeah, comment.
Yeah.
Which one of those?
You guys, if you like these, let us know what you think we should do.
Yeah.
Can we give one of those before we go?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for NRW. It's the crew.
For the North.